And I definitely could have swam in college. I wasn't quite at the level I hoped I would have been at. Like I was nowhere near getting recruited to a program like Cal. Um, and so one of my teammates, her dad, just mentioned to me one day, we were up camping, and hey, Kara, have you ever thought of rowing? And I thought that was just an outrageous thing to say. And I was like, in my mind, you specialize and then you go into the sport that you have been spending all this time doing. Like, never in my mind did I think there was a sport where I could start at 18 and end up at the Olympics. So I kind of brushed it off initially, and then like thought about it a couple weeks later. I was like, what was he talking about? Like, what is rowing?
I'm super excited let's restart. Hold on. I whiffed there. I whiffed there. Let's restart. Well, we're going to restart that.
Okay.
I was from the top. All right. There we go. All right, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, cool.
Attention, go.
Attention, go. All right, here we go. So for everyone listening, I have Kara Kohler here, and Kara is here for actually the second time. We tried to get a run in pre-Olympics. So Kara's a multiple-time Olympian. I'm going to let her share her story here in a second. And we tried to get her pre-Olympics, but now we have her post-Olympics, and I'm very excited because her background, her rowing experience, how she got into rowing is stuff that I'm really excited to dive into, really passionate about. But Kara, why don't you share a little bit about your background, right? So we're a 3-time Olympian, just got done at Paris a couple weeks ago. My first question for you, and you can dive into your background first, but then what does the last couple weeks look like? Where are you currently? What's going on post-Olympics? And how does an experienced Olympic athlete, someone who's been there for a couple of cycles, how do they spend the 4 to 6 weeks post an Olympic Games? So why don't you dive into that?
Yeah, welcome to my post-Olympic depression era. It's been about three weeks, I guess, yeah, since I landed back in California post-Paris, and I am currently residing at my parents' house. That's where all my stuff landed in the past year of living life on the road. So there is no permanent home, so here I am now. This is living the dream. This is what it looks like being a 3-time Olympic athlete. And yeah, so now I'm just trying to process all the emotions of the past, not only this Olympic cycle, but really 14 years, I guess, plus since this journey started. Pretty fatigued from it all. And so trying to shift my focus now to developing career skills outside of rowing. Do I see myself continuing to LA? That's definitely tempting, given it's a home Olympic Games and in my home state. But I think the next year or two I'll be spending time away from rowing. So.
And whereabouts in California are you? Are you like, because I know you went to Cal, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But where is home for you?
Yeah, so not far from Cal. I'm in the East Bay. Clayton, California is my hometown, so that's in the Walnut Creek, Concord area of the East Bay. Yeah,
Gotcha.
San Francisco.
Okay. And so obviously, a couple weeks post the games. And I'm actually my question for you is again like what I was kind of processing. I was like, hey, like what does an athlete do, in terms of like fit, because this podcast is primarily, it's a rowing based podcast, but it's mostly, fitness, performance, all that fun stuff. But where does fitness and exercise fit into the routine of an Olympic athlete the next few weeks after? Like, have you thought about rowing? Have you touched an erg? Have you transitioned
really
to cross training?
Yeah.
Or are you just literally sitting on the couch watching Netflix?
Yeah, no, I don't think I could ever do that. I think we become pretty in tune with our body and how like exercise and routines affect, I feel like, our emotions, at least I have become. So while I'm not doing 2, 90-minute cardio sessions a day plus strength training right now, I'm definitely making an effort to make sure I get outside in the morning. Because if I stay inside all day, that makes for, very depresso Kara, especially with the lack of structure now that I'm not, in a full-time training regimen. So definitely making an effort to get out in the morning, even if that's just a short walk, short, 15, 30-minute walk with my dog, just to make sure I'm staying active. And I have touched a norm. Megan Musnicki and I have gone out in the double out of California Rowing Club in Oakland. So that's been fun, transitioning Moose to the sculling side. Not that she has any plans to, continue pursuing elite rowing. We'll see about that. But it definitely, I think, helps us keep our sanity right now as we're focusing on transitioning into, um, a career, whatever that may be. So it's very vague right now. But
Yeah.
fitness definitely is important to me and makes me feel good. So when I don't work out, I can feel pretty crappy. So I've always told myself, like, when I'm not focused on full-time training, at minimum, I can just do what I did for my warm-ups, like while I'm competing. So that's like, some mobility, 10, 20 minutes of cardio, and that's enough to get the juices flowing and to feel alive. So yeah, really just strip away any expectations of what fitness is and just do what is, I'm doing what feels good right now.
Well, I'd say you definitely earned it. I would say, after the last couple, what I'm assuming, the last year and actually, greater, 12 plus years or whatever it's been. So, but I want to take it back. And the reason I ask more so is because I'm always curious, like, hey, like, obviously fitness is part of your routine, your life, right? And some people, in order to get to that level, it's, like the fitness and the stimulus that they get from hard work, exercise actually drives in many ways the rowing. The rowing is kind of like a vehicle for that, for that physical outlet. And I want to take it all the way back to, so you were a walk-on at Cal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you were a
Correct.
walk-on at Cal, and I love.
A recruited walk-on. So
okay.
I had been recruited. Yeah. But didn't row.
And Gotcha. And those are, I love talking to walk-ons. I was a walk-on in college. I didn't start rowing until I was in college. And those are athletes that I personally really loved talking to because they have this athletic versatility, they played other sports and stuff like that in high school. And I want to take it all the way back to, I guess, your high school days. And I think, I know you were a competitive swimmer. That was kind of the path, or, the, again, physical outlet that you were pursuing at the high school level. Tell me a little bit about some of where athletics was in your life as a high school athlete, high school kid, and then bridging that gap into, like this whole rowing thing at Cal. That sounds interesting. Someone called me and told me about, the possibility of walking on, and then how that, we'll get into eventually how that turned into a, 3-time, Olympic career and all that fun stuff. But I want to start with, where did athletics fit into your life as a high school athlete, and then when did it start to click where, okay, rowing might be the path that I pursue collegiately?
Yeah, elite sport has always been the center of my world, I would say, since I was about 14 when I started high school. I mean, even before that, I very much thrived in, high competitive sports environments. I tried different things. Swimming has always been the main one, but I played tennis, I did track and field, I dabbled in team sports. My personality, I didn't quite click with those as well. But yeah, I was definitely bouncing around between all the sports and getting different experience, up until high school when I decided I wanted to focus in, hone my attention on one sport in the hopes that I could get recruited to a Division I program. So yeah, I made that decision that I would swim year round, starting my freshman year with a very high performing group and coaches with a lot of experience up to the Olympic level. So yeah, I was doing two a day, like 4 times a week in high school, and not only that, I was commuting like 40 minutes each way. Was it the most sustainable path at the time? No. But I appreciate and really value all the experience that team gave me in developing my foundational skills that then transferred very easily into rowing once I decided to take that path. So I could have, so like as I was getting recruited, I was looking at schools for swimming because that's what I had spent all my time on. And I definitely could have swam in college. I wasn't quite at the level I hoped I would have been at. Like I was nowhere near getting recruited to a program like Cal. And so one of my teammates, her dad, mentioned to me one day, we were up camping, and hey, Kara, have you ever thought of rowing? And I thought that was just an outrageous thing to say. And I was like, in my mind, you specialize and then you go into the sport that you have been spending all this time doing. Like, never in my mind did I think there was a sport where I could start at 18 and end up at the Olympics. So I kind of brushed it off initially, and then like thought about it a couple weeks later. I was like, what was he talking about? Like, what is rowing? Like I'm a little too far away from the like Oakland area, the waterways, to have known what rowing was out here. No one rowed out here in Clayton. So I looked into it and then read some stories of athletes who I then ended up training with that made the Beijing team, who had been walk-ons. And I was like, really? Like, okay, like this is actually feasible to go into a sport that I've never done and make my way up to the Olympic team. So that's definitely what changed or attracted me to reaching out to the Cal coaches at the time, sent them my swimming be recruited profile with my times and all that stuff. And then, yeah, they're like, oh, they're like, yeah, you look like a good athlete. We'd love to have you out, show you around. And so they did. And it was a pretty easy sell for me because in my mind, I thought, wow, how cool would it be to go to UC Berkeley like a lot of my swimming idols did, close to home. So once that offer was made, it was a pretty easy sell, even though I knew nothing about rowing. And I asked Dave O'Neill, who was the coach at Cal at the time and who was my coach all 4 years, like, okay, should I start rowing now? And he said to me, no, just keep doing what you're doing. So this was the beginning of my senior year of high school. So I committed to Cal the fall of that year and then continued to swim year round throughout my senior year, and then took my first strokes when I got to Cal.
That was going to be my next.
So,
that was going to be my next question.
From swimming. Yeah.
That was going to be my next question. So when did you? Yeah. So you took your first strokes. So like, did you ever hop on the Erg in high school and just do an Erg test or something like that, just to kind of see, like, or was it just literally, I'm going to focus on swimming. I'm going to conclude this swimming career, and then once I set foot, at Cal's campus, then I'll take my first strokes. That's how it was.
Pretty much. I mean, the gym I would go to with my parents and play with weights, they had the water rower, so I'd messed around on that, like, oh, this is rowing, cool. There was one, my dad worked with a guy at the time, Jonathan Greer, who was an athlete at California Rowing Club at Oakland, so that's like 45 minutes from where I grew up. And so once he found out, my dad was like, oh, my daughter's gonna row at Cal, like, should she know anything or whatever? And he invited me out to the boathouse in Oakland, so at some point during my senior year, and just like taught me the basics of rowing for like 10-15 minutes. So that was my first exposure to, I guess, the elite rowing world, was that little mini erg session at the Oakland Cal boathouse with him. But then I just went back to swimming and didn't do any tests or anything until I got to Cal.
And when you so I have to dive into this because this is so fun to me. I love talking to athletes who, like, especially in rowing, because like I said, I didn't start until I got to college. And I think, like you said, there's so many examples of people, at different levels who aspire to different heights within rowing. But for you, would you say, like, I'm trying to think of a way to word this question, but like, would you say like it almost offered an advantage for you, or not necessarily an advantage, but like it was a value add for you having not taken any strokes in high school? I'm not advocating for high school kids to be like, hey, quit rowing and do swimming.
Right.
But do you feel like having that skill set or that versatility, or just, because I always say like swimmers are some of the best crossover athletes for rowing in many ways, because you learn how to pace yourself. It's a full body movement. You learn, like I've seen it as a coach, those athletes have some pretty good success. And I'm a believer that many athletes who have this athletic diversity, you can teach them how to row. And as long as they're competitive and, work hard, like they can see some kind of success in rowing. But do you feel like that was a value add for you, not having taken any strokes, in terms of just not only your performance when you did start taking strokes, but also the energy that you had to try something new when you set foot on campus, when you walked on for the first time? Was it like, oh, this is brand new, and that in and of itself, let alone just college, but that experience of a new physical outlet, like how was that as a motivational piece for your trajectory as a college athlete?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy I wasn't a junior rower. Not because I don't think you can gain a lot from it, but just because of like you mentioned, the athletic diversity and the freshness I felt when I started the sport at Cal. I definitely foresaw I probably would have burnt out in swimming and had that experience in college, but instead I was met with a new challenge and something where my skills transferred very quickly. I had a very big fitness base from cardio base from swimming, knew how to train. So yeah, I count myself, and I feel like I would not be at 3 Olympics, I don't think, if I had been a junior rower. I mean, maybe I would have, but those first couple years of rowing were definitely a thrill because you're just improving so quickly, and I was able to climb the ladder at a very accelerated pace, just given the high performance environment I was put into at Cal with a lot of athletes who had experience on the junior U23 senior team Olympic level that I was able to look up to and kind of use them as a example, a benchmark of success in the sport and learn from them. So yeah, I think by starting in college, it allowed me to start at a very high caliber place. But I think, as a junior rower, not a disadvantage, but I would say, it's good to still athletically diversify, and I think it's good for your body too. Creates resiliency when you're adept at different sports and movements, and so yeah, even now as I row, I'm very into cross training and maintaining, athleticism by doing different modes of training. So yeah, I would say it was a pretty big advantage for me to come in with the background I had.
All right, what's up, everyone? Quick interruption to the podcast to tell you about the Erg First Row Second online course. This course is designed for athletes who are 0 to 3 years into their rowing career who are looking to better understand and maximize the concept to erg, because we all know the erg matters, and there is no better tool for developing rowing specific fitness. And this course offers 3.5 hours worth of content and instruction to help you truly set a foundation that can set you up for long-term success. We're going to be talking about proper erg setup. We're going to be talking about controlling your environment. We're also taking a deep dive into rowing technique and also a really high-level view of training programs and allowing you to actually set up a path that can help guide you moving forward. So if you're interested, go to the website courses.at1000.com and go check it out. Because again, if you're 0 to 3 years into your rowing career, you want to have that stable foundation that you can start stacking bricks upon, where the erg is something that you are comfortable with. It's something that you appreciate, and it's something that you can best utilize in order to guide you moving forward. And that's what this course is all about. So check it out. Let us know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon. Now back to the show. Peace. And what did your first year at Cal look like? Like your first rowing year, and it's not obviously it's an incredibly competitive program. And obviously it was, I think, I have here, you guys won a national championship in Varsity 8, a few years into your rowing career. And actually before that, because we're going to talk about the timeline, right? Before that, you actually had, you literally went from starting rowing in walking on into Cal. A couple years later, you're in the Olympics. After that, it sounds like you're winning a Varsity 8 national championship. Like that timeline in and of itself sounds or is definitely worth digging into here in a second. But talk to me about about that first year, like the first strokes, what was that? What was the first year like? Was there a learning curve? Did you find immediate success? Was it, hey, like this is, there's some kind of, obstacles that I had to kind of get through in order to kind of break through? What was the first year like?
It was definitely intimidating going into a new sport with athletes who are confident in their skills. And I, feel like I'm a pretty quiet, observant person. So it was just, a lot of listening and learning and following. And but yeah, it was definitely a little overwhelming to start at such a high level. But I feel like I learned pretty quickly again because of the caliber of athlete that was on the team. So I took to the erg very quickly. That's where I stood out initially, and that's what got me attention ultimately to get into the national team so quickly. So yeah, Ivo Obradovic, she's one of my big inspirations on the team at the time. She was an Olympic athlete, is an Olympic athlete for Team Serbia. So I just kind of like looked at her. I was like, oh, we're similar stature build. I'll just pull what she's pulling. So yeah, I did that. But then like actually learning the skill of rowing is a little more complex than sitting on an erg and just yamming on it. So that took a little more time, but I was able to sit in the Varsity pretty quickly, and I took, big crab my first practice in the boat, and that was like, oh my god, I'm really in over my head, but the team was great, and really helped lift me up, and learned from a lot of really cool athletes that I got to ultimately race with and win a national championship with. Yeah.
And what was the process along with that? Like, what was the process for like when you realize, okay, I'm at Cal, I'm having, I've overcome the learning curve that is rowing, and now the Olympics is on the horizon, and whether you're even thinking about that or not, but obviously, your first Olympics 2012. When did that become something that actually materialized? Like when was that actually something that obviously probably had the national team first, but then, the Olympic journey after that? Obviously you're still in school technically, right? I guess, right? So when did that become a realistic opportunity, and when did you decide to go down that route?
Yeah, it was probably it was in my first semester at Cal that I think was, like told like, oh, like you could really take this to the top. I just remember after, I think it was the first 6K erg test I did, and I was maybe second to Eva or third on the team on that first 6K, and standing outside the erg room, like drinking out of the hose, and Eva came out and very graciously was like, Kara, like, I think you can be very, very good. I was like, oh my god, like, I'm impressed, Eva. Like, that's so cool. She was very much my like idol from the start because she had been to the Olympics. So I think that was the moment I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. Like, what I'm doing is good. Just keep focusing on working hard, doing all the practices, being receptive to coaching and all that. And then I guess the next step came U23s that summer after my freshman year. So that was the first national team experience I had after my first season at Cal, where I ended up racing in the Varsity 8. And it was really just a step-by-step process. Like, okay, I have the erg score. Like, obviously, can always improve on that in fitness. Like, I really need to just hone in on my technical abilities now. This is the weakest link. And learning to row, I learned to row in eights, as many collegiate or junior rowers do in the U.S. So I didn't really have any strong small boat skills going into my first national team experience with U23s. But there are a lot of other athletes in a very similar situation. So yeah, I got to U23s and then ended up in the eight that year where we won. And a lot of those athletes ended up on the Olympic team or in the eights during the years they were winning gold. And so I think I was just in the right place at the right time, I feel like. But yeah, it was just really a step-by-step process again of like, okay, checking boxes and making sure I'm doing all the work and learning from athletes, because you can learn something from everyone. So does that answer your question a little?
Yeah, no, it does, and it's fascinating because I think like again like you had this foundation that you developed all through high school, and then you kind of took to the sport rather quickly, and it sounds like the fitness came first and then the technique kind of evolved after that.
Yeah, fitness really opens the door. So having erg
Yeah.
scores definitely help, but you can't just rely on that. I very much wanted to become a technically proficient rower, which I'm still working on 14 years later. Refining the small boat feel and stuff. That didn't come, I feel like, until the second half of my career, really after I didn't make the Olympic team in 2016. So it's a long journey. There's always something to work on.
Where like, so when you're traveling through the college landscape, right, and doing your freshman year, then going off with U23s, eventually the Olympics and stuff like that, like what did training look like for you in terms of like, were you, when you found out that you could make the Olympics, or that was on the horizon, or sorry, that was a potential thing that you could pursue, did you increase, like, were you seeking other coaching? Were you trying to do other, erg work, or more erg workouts? Like, did your training evolve from just what you were doing with your team? Like, or were you starting to find that you need to do some extra work? Was that erg work? Was that work on the erg? Was it cross training? What did like the life of I guess is a better way to say it. What did the life of an athlete who is pursuing both success at the college level and success at the national level look like at a academically rigorous school like Cal? Like, how did you balance all those different things? I guess that's what I'm really trying to get at.
I mean, yes, I was incredibly driven. I was like, there's a shot I could be on the 2012 Olympic team. And I started, so my freshman year started fall of 2009. So to give you a timeline. And then so again, like those critical points I mentioned, like, oh, okay, my first 6K went really well. Like, oh, my 2K, like can pull a time on par with Eva, who's been to the Olympics. Like, once I realized that, then I spent a lot of time, doing extra workouts on the erg, mostly steady state workouts, which, in college are a little firmer steady state. My definition of steady state has changed a little, with heart rate zones and everything. But at the time, I had the capacity, maybe at the detriment to my studies a little bit. I spent a lot of time doing extra workouts. I mean, I made sure I was doing the work I was given first to a very, high quality. But yeah, I also did a lot of cross train. I really enjoyed running, and so I would go on runs or do stadiums. Yeah, I was a pretty crazy fitness person and was determined to have the fastest erg scores, because that was clearly my ticket into the senior national team and a shot at the Olympic team. So yeah, I would do it with teammates too. There were a lot of athletes who would, try and get other athletes to do extra workouts. Do I think extra workouts is always the answer? No. I think you need to focus on the work you're given first and make sure you're able to do that fully. Um, but yeah, I think then it also just creates a mindset of like you're going to band together with your teammates and go above and beyond. So yeah, there was definitely some extra work that was being done.
Yeah. And then when did you, so you're 2012, right? I don't know. My mental math isn't the junior year, senior, like, was that your junior year? Did you take a year off and then come back for your senior year when you guys, had some success
Yeah,
in college? What year was that for you?
yeah. So it was after my sophomore year. So I did freshman year, U23s after my freshman year, did my sophomore year, and then I deferred my junior year. So I spent, the year between my junior and senior year living in Princeton, training for London. Um, yeah, yeah, I'd been invited to like come see the senior national team workings down in Chula Vista after fall semester. So I went and did a couple-day trip down there and kind of just got to be immersed in the senior team for a couple days, and that was very, very overwhelming. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I've only been rowing for like a year. Why am I here? Um, but so yeah, that was like my first foot in the door. And then I remember Tom Terhar, the coach at the time, Tom and Laurel were the coaches. Was like, all right, go back to school, break 21 minutes on your 6K, and win a national championship, and then we'll discuss training. Moving out to train with the team leading up to London. It's like, all right, break 21, win a national championship. So I got the sub 21 6K that spring. We didn't win nationals, but we were second or third. So
Yeah.
still got
What
invited though. So I moved out, in June of 2011 after my sophomore year to Princeton.
was that like a hard decision for you, or were you like, let's go, like I'm ready. I've been
No.
rowing for a year or two, and
Mm-hmm.
the Olympics is an opportunity that I've wanted to pursue. And like, was it like an easy decision for you to defer a year of college, and come back to college after it? Like, what was that decision like? Was how what was the level of difficulty in that decision?
Yeah, it was just shy of 2 years of rowing, but it was a very easy decision. There was no doubt in my mind that that's what I wanted to pursue since I wanted to be an Olympic athlete since I was 9 years old. So, like, this is my shot. Now's the time. So, no, it definitely there wasn't any questioning in my mind that I wanted to take that opportunity. Um, yeah, so I did. Moved out, just kind of showed up. Didn't know where I was going to live. Was this like 19-year-old athlete, and everyone, is graduate had graduated college, so they're in their mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And it's like, oh my god. So I slept on a teammate's couch for a week or two, and then kind of like through the grapevine started figuring out the inner workings of the national team, and I was like, okay, I need to find a host family. um, didn't like have my car out there at the time. I was like biking around in Princeton humid summers. Um, And so I ended up, finding a host family and all that who was very gracious and hosted me for that whole year. It's kind of like, oh, can you host me for the fall or the summer? Oh, I'm going to be here for the year. Could you? So, you know, that's a lot of what national team life is like.
Yeah.
It's changed a little bit, but yeah, just kind of got thrown into it that first month. And I think, within a couple weeks of being there, I was rowing a quad, and Tom Terhar, he said, all right, you're going to race a quad at Royal Henley. And at that point, it was like a couple weeks away. Like, all right. I hadn't sculled. I had gone out in a single just because I was curious once or twice when I was at Cal, just to see what the whole sculling discipline was about. But I had no, big boat experience rowing a quad. So that was pretty fun with some big names at the time: Esther Lofgren, Elle Logan, Karin Davies. So I just kind of got sandwiched in between this, very powerful quad and got to learn. That was my first, yeah, um, experience in sculling. And we ended up going to Henley and we ended up winning to the shock of many, including ourselves. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of initial success in my career, like one U23s, one Royal Henley, and then I got to sit in the women's 8 for a race at World Cup in Lucerne where we won. And so it was like just this rush of like initial success. And then, you know, then things kind of had to start not working a little more, but like
Yeah.
ended up didn't make the 8 that summer, which was my goal. I want to make the 8. Who didn't want to make the 8? Um, then I ended up in the women's 4 that year, which at the time was more of a development boat because it wasn't an Olympic class event yet for women. But that was, I think the experience I needed to be in that 4 with Sarah Hendershot, Emily Regan, Sarah Zelenka, rowers who had some more experience and confidence, and to be sandwiched amongst them and learning from them and how they approach racing. And yeah, that was a fun experience. So ended up in that 4, and then the next year was really a lot of learning how to row the pair. So figuring out the finesse of the small boat, which I didn't take to very as quickly as I took to the erg, shocking. But I spent a lot of time rowing with Karen Davies, who is, I would say the greatest female rower, arguably of all time. Definitely, yeah. So she was very patient with me, and I got to learn from her as she was entering back into the sport after having spent some time away, focusing on her law career. Yeah, but I wasn't very good on the pair, any of the small boats. But I was fortunate to row with athletes who were much more developed in that area than me and learn from them. So yeah, it was intimidating, and I cried many times just because of the pressure I was putting on myself. Yeah, I felt a lot of external pressure, but really, I think it was all just it all comes from within, right? I wanted to like live up to this like novice rower goes to the Olympics hype. There was a lot of excitement around like my trajectory into the national team, and I felt a lot of pressure to like again live up to that. Even though at some point there was like a breaking point in December, so like middle of that year leading up to London, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. This is too much. I just want to go back to school, and this is too hard. I can't deal with the pressure. And then I'd come in crying. So Tom, and he was just like, "It'll be okay. Just like go home, like reset. Like, yeah, you could always go back to school if you want, but um, I don't really remember exactly what he said, but I think I just remember mentally like resetting at that point and being like, okay, I'm gonna finish what I started, and whether I make this Olympic team or not, I'm gonna gain a ton of experience in the sport that will set me up well when I go back to Cal, and then will hopefully set me up well for future Olympiads. Yeah, just that shift in mindset when the pressure became too much definitely helped me relax and, try and enjoy the process a little more rather than fixating so much on whether or not I was going to reach the end goal of making the Olympic team.
What what advice would you give to like a high school athlete? And again, like everyone's path when they get to college is a lot different in terms of like, okay, well, some people put pressure on themselves in terms of, academics. Some people put all this pressure on themselves in terms of, athletics and pursuing, and trying to be in the best boat they can be, or this and that. Or you see it on the high school level with kids trying to get into college and putting pressure on themselves with 2Ks and, academic performances and this and that to get recruited and, go down that path. But I think one of the things that for you, it's like, okay, well, not every athlete's going to walk in and be, and really see on paper success very quickly. However, even someone like that, like yourself, um, and having this kind of a lot of things coming at you at once, just like anyone who's entering the college or professional careers or whatever, what would you what advice would you give someone who is a younger athlete or a younger student who is getting a lot of things thrown at them? Is it like, hey, like keeping your vision in sight and that's going to be the main, light at the end of the tunnel that you keep driving towards? Is it finding some kind of athletic or social or, leisurely, outlet that you can go back and kind of disconnect from the sport a little bit or disconnect from whatever that main driver of the stress is coming from? I'd be curious for someone like you who saw rapid things being thrown at you very quickly, from novice walk on to V8, making the varsity 8 to making a national team to making the Olympics and all that. Like what you just alluded to, sometimes it does come to that point of reflection on whether this is worthwhile as a pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to those athletes who maybe feel that similar situation or in different areas, right? So what advice would you give to those athletes?
Yeah, when you're pursuing a big goal, it's going to be overwhelming and there are going to be all these pieces thrown at you that you don't necessarily know what they mean. And I feel like just breaking it down into the day by day, like obviously having your big goal in sight, but having the smaller goals along the way that are going to, give you confidence towards that final destination goal, is pretty important. So I think that's kind of how I've always approached it. I mean, you have to, like, or you'll go crazy, like, or you won't get anywhere. Like, you have to show up day to day and chip away at the bigger picture. So, yeah, I think that's applies anywhere, and is definitely something I'm trying to remind myself of right now as I feel very overwhelmed, trying to enter into this, professional world of whatever I want to do next. Try and find all the resources of like athlete transition stuff like that the USOPC offers, and it's like I'm in over my head. I'm not prepared for this. But we have skills as rowers or whatever your pursuit is that are your foundation and make you who you are and why you're so driven. And so kind of got to remember that and remember your whys when it gets hard. Wait, why am I doing this? Why do I love this? I love this, right? Yeah.
And what was the so you went to the Olympics, you made the team, you got a bronze medal in the quad in 2012. And then you came back to school to finish your senior year where you accomplished the next half of, what junior. Okay. And
Yeah.
won the national championship in the V8 for Cal. When you were coming back from the Olympics, where was your confidence as a rower entering another year of college rowing and going after a national championship? So like, where was your confidence level at in regards to like in this newfound like, oh, like I just competed at the highest level, now I'm going back to college and competing? Obviously you still have to, there's still that hard work that's incorporated in that. And then also, what was the comparison between winning a national championship at the college level and the Olympics? Was it like, hey, like was this something where it's like, man, like there, I think both, having a medal at the Olympics and winning a national championship, in the at NCAAs, I'm sure both were just this adrenaline rush of confidence, and moving forward. But tell me a little bit about that experience going from the Olympics straight back into college.
Well, I was in for a rocky ride. Didn't know that in the first couple weeks because, I mean, I literally went from finishing the Olympics to about 2 weeks later, starting
Yeah.
my junior year.
Wow.
So just jumping back into student athlete life again. And I was still riding the high of competing at the Olympics, winning an Olympic medal. Like, yeah, kind of like fulfilling this novice to Olympic medalist journey. But it caught up with me. Reality caught up with me pretty quickly, and I didn't quite know what academic path I was on at the time. So, training and trying to figure all that out was a lot. And I ultimately, like mid-semester October, decided I needed to step away, or it would be best if I took some time off the rest of the semester to figure out my academic path, because I needed to do that to graduate. So Dave and I had a conversation and decided it would be best if I took the rest of the semester off. So yeah, I think that was, I definitely didn't know it at the time, but got a taste of like this post-Olympic depression people talk about, because you reach such a high and you can ride that for a while, but then the day-to-day routines have to snap back into place at some point, and that's definitely an emotional roller coaster. And also just with school and everything, there was a lot on my plate. Like, I feel like the first 2 years, freshman and sophomore year, I could get away with focusing more on rowing, but that wasn't the case when I came back. So it was hard, yeah, to then just have to focus on school and not having the routine or team environment. I was still living with teammates. Maybe that made it harder. I don't know, because then I'm like seeing them go to practice, um, and again, like back to like my trajectory, I had continued to improve up to the Olympics. Like, there was really no like downswings or plateaus along the way. So yeah, I finally got to experience kind of like taking some steps back in the fitness not being where it was when I came back to the team in January, and learning how to be patient in that process. Because after an experience like that, as I've learned, 3 Olympics later, rest and taking time away is very powerful. And, I think we've seen that in this with other athletes, very famous athletes in the Paris Olympics, like thinking of Simone Biles, and how she had struggled with her mental side and training leading up to Tokyo, and took a step back, focused on other life things, and we all saw what she did at Paris. So learning how to take time away and focus on other things, and you can still have a desire to row or whatever it is you do, and like trust that your energy will recharge. At least that's what I've learned. So I think now I feel, after my third Olympics, I feel much more relaxed and just like, okay, I'm going to focus on other areas. Like, I'm very single-minded, so it's hard for me to juggle too many things. Like, I can focus on developing my professional side and just like kind of maintain a fitness base and do fun fitness, whatever, I feel like doing. And then like if I want to come back to rowing, yeah, I might not be as fit as I have been, but in a way that's kind of fun because you get to experience the build again.
And what I have to like I mean, and I think like one of the things that I'm also really curious about is like to be a 2012 Olympian, 2020 and 2024 Olympian, like, and to hear what you're talking about now, like your path of resilience through what you're describing in terms of like, okay, like we have these highs and then we, kind of come back to real world, and then these highs and come back to real world. And in terms of like that path from 2012 to 2013, and then, to now be wrapping up your third Olympics, like it's impressive in terms of like, you just been living with this competitive placing of this pressure on your shoulders and
Yeah, I
dealing
guess I
with
never
it.
really answered your question about how the bronze medal compared to winning a national championship that year. I think what I was getting at, as I got lost in the post-Olympic depression phase, was like coming back in January. Yeah, I was like out of shape for me. I got beat by athletes I had never gotten beaten by on the erg. So that was uh, something to deal with, but I was like, it's okay. Like, you'll get there. So then having that year end in a national championship where we didn't like win all our races leading up, we had, some big disappointments to like, recommitting every time with the team and keeping our eyes set on that goal of winning a national championship. I would say that was, in a way, even more fulfilling than winning an Olympic medal. To, yeah, win that national championship. What with a lot of athletes that were my freshman class, my original 2013 class. Because, yeah, from a personal perspective, I started that year off in a very negative place. Wasn't the fittest I had ever been. Um, and then to jump back in and build that experience with my teammates was very fulfilling when we won that race. So, yes, an Olympic medal, nothing can really compare to that. But then to come back and achieve one of my initial goals with my Cal teammates to win a national championship was so sweet. Yeah. After all the lows that I had experienced that year, to then come in and you know
Yeah.
crawl my way back.
And when did you and that was your junior year, correct? When you won the
Yeah.
national championship. So that was technically your junior year,
Hmm.
or that was your junior year, and then you had your senior year. But then after that, like this path from, okay, well now, and right, I believe, and you can dive into this if you would like to, but I know you had 2016 where you weren't in the Olympics, but then 2020, and obviously 2024. From when you graduated at Cal, what was that feeling of, okay, like I want to make this what turned into, I don't know if that was the original intent, but what turned into a 10-year, or I guess 8-year to today kind of plan to kind of go to the Olympics and position myself even better? Like, I'm just curious in terms of like, what was the mindset going into what has now turned into a 12-year path Olympic journey? What was
Yeah.
that? When did that really start to come about? And what was your mindset going into
Um,
that?
I mean, I knew I wanted to keep training. I just loved the idea of going to multiple Olympics and trying to win more medals. I think I fell into an illusion that I made one Olympic team and the next one should be easier, or like um in a way. But I learned that was not the case when I didn't make the 2016 Rio team. Uh yeah. So I got to experience my first full 4-year cycle. Um Even though I was still at school for 2 of those years, my junior year and senior year, 2013 and 14. So I was focused more on school and not quite training as much, and not quite, I guess, driven to do all these extra workouts as I was leading up to London. But by the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to continue training and try and make the Rio team. I rejoined the team in Chula Vista in 2015, and yeah, I was in a much different position than when I came in 2011. I was not quite as fit. I wasn't like, my fitness wasn't wildly different, but the level of the team had evolved um, in that Rio cycle. The depth, um, yeah, the fittest group of athletes that I think the U.S. rowing women's team has ever seen. So yeah, that was an experience to try and keep up with those athletes. And um, so yeah, fitness wasn't definitely my standout achievement anymore when I came back for Rio. And it's, when I didn't make the team, I spent a lot of time trying to process, and then like, it's easy to become fixated on like, I didn't make the team, so I didn't do as well. Like, I failed. Like, what went wrong? But I think, just like I said, the team was a lot stronger. So it was, I think, just like, I don't know that 2012 Kara would have made that team. But there were a lot of areas that I was improved on immensely, like my pair results. I was in the A final of the NSR that year in 2016, an Olympic year, so the most competitive year. So I had to be like, okay, well, that's something to be proud of. Like, I am so much more confident in my small boat skills, rowing a pair, like, that I did not have leading up to London. Like, I could barely row a single. Which one of my coaches, Bernhard, was very amused by after London, that I could win an Olympic medal in the single and didn't know how, or in the quad, didn't had very little skill in the single. So yeah, I just had to, in processing the Rio experience, look at all the things I did improve on that then kind of fueled my comeback, whatever you want to call it, towards Tokyo. I think I was, I was pretty close to making that Rio team. I just fell a little short. And there was a lot of lessons and improvements I made despite not making the team. So, what was the question? I've gotten lost.
So no, and no, I think you kind of answered it, or just in terms of like the resiliency and being able
Resiliency,
to,
yes.
yeah. And I'm curious from you, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to ask you a couple training questions if you don't mind. I want to ask you a couple tangible items that maybe you feel like have, as I always say, like I want to put myself in the shoes of the high school athletes that I work with or that I get to know and stuff like that. And it's like, what are some questions that maybe, or what are some things that maybe they, can take from your experience, as a, someone who has seen success in the sport for over a decade. And I'm sure your training has evolved over the course of those, those years in terms of not only your experience having, started in college, but what are some things that, what are some things that maybe have you adjusted or changed or evolved from in the course of your like just general training? Are there things that you maybe didn't do early on in your training that you started to incorporate a lot more? Was it, a couple examples that come to mind is like, did you add, some kind of, mobility or resistance or core? Was it, oh, I need to spend more time in the single versus on the erg so I can evolve? Like, what are some things like that maybe lessons that you would have told yourself 10 years ago that, or things that you evolve to now? What are some of those things, if you don't mind?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's definitely changed, my mindset at least. When I first got into rowing, I was very focused on just the erg and being the best at that. So I spent a lot of extra time erging. And I mean, like I said, I also enjoyed running and found, that's very good at getting one fit for rowing. But like my background came from, I feel like, athleticism and being good and or at least somewhat good in many different modalities. I think that's made my body very resilient. I've been fortunate to not deal with any big injuries. My body got, I think, used to doing different things, and I had some strength base too from high school, just learning how to move properly. Uh, that's helped me, I feel like, stay resilient to injuries. And then I think like leading up to really until I started rowing the single, I was under the impression like I needed to just focus on the rowing stroke. Like, yes, there's a lot of truth in that. Like, you need to row to be good at rowing, and you need to spend, thousands, however many of hours perfecting rowing by actually rowing. But, it's also good to give your mind a break, and so much of rowing is fitness based. And so I got to a point where I was burnt out on not only rowing in general, but like the erg. And so when I didn't make the team in 2016, I came back home and I think just like re-fell in love with kind of fun fitness Kara, running and biking and playing in the gym with strength stuff. And yeah, just like making up circuits for myself, really just reconnecting myself with why I enjoyed being an athlete, and I truly enjoy movement and how it makes me feel. And so it also, I think, yeah, refreshed my body and not only my mind, but my body. And then, funny enough, the year I feel like I spent the least amount of time rowing was the year I PR'd on my 2K. So I haven't PR'd very many times in my career because I started at such like a high level. Like the separation between my first 2K and my PR is like 14 seconds. Not that much. So, I think, yeah, a lot of that again was a lot that went into that 2K PR wasn't just like, I feel like back to the point of taking time away to reignite passion and the desire to like be the best at something. It was not only that, but then just like doing what felt good to my body and mind at the time, which was different modalities. Um, Swimming, I got back into swimming that year. I hadn't swam for 7 years since I left high school, and so got into master swimming. And I feel like jumping back into the pool, it was really exciting because I was like, I feel like my approach to training had evolved a ton since I was a high school swimmer, and like my focus on technique and like how that can, like, little tweaks in how you move your body can pay off hugely for speed. So that was fun to experience swimming again through like my new lens that I had gained through my rowing career and like going to the Olympics and missing an Olympic team. So I I found that to be very enjoyable. Uh, but yeah, then I got back into rowing and wanted to try the single that year. So this was the like start of 2017 that I decided I would, because I didn't know if I wanted to keep rowing after Rio. I was pretty bummed by that. I was like, oh, okay, well maybe I peaked in London as like a rower of 3 years, and I was convinced that I had peaked in London when I didn't make the Rio team. Because again, fixated on the goal, like, oh, I failed, but I was like, wait, I actually improved a lot. Just like there were so many stronger athletes. Um, so what was I saying? Oh, right, yeah. So when I decided I wanted to come back, I was like, well, I need to spend time away from the training center. Because I felt like I wasn't getting as much small boat skill or coaching as I thought I needed to get better. Because, you can only coach only two people can only coach so much when you have like 30 athletes. So I wanted also just to be close to home and live at home for that year. So I spent my time at California Rowing Club under the coaching of Bernhard Stomporowski and Peter Mansfeld, who are very skilled in the sculling world and helped me, yeah, gain a lot of feel for the small boat that I didn't have as much, especially sculling. So like I wanted to be in the quad in 2016. I was interested, like that was my goal. But we actually spent most of the year in pairs. I think just that was the 8 was the priority boat, so the focus was to make sure that boat won a medal again. So that was another driver of why I chose to row the single, because I wanted to focus on sculling. I think like that was where I was more capable, or at least what I enjoyed more. So I thought, well, whether I'm good at the single or not, it'll set me up well fitness wise and technically to then re-enter the training center group with, more competent in my fitness and my small boat feel. So I ended up enjoying the single and being decent. I was like, well, I'll race at trials that summer in 2017. And so I did that, and I was up against Felice Mueller, who had rowed the pair in Rio and was like the queen of small boats. And she's amazing. One of the best teammates I've ever had. But yeah, I got to race her, and I lost to her, which was obviously disappointing. But I was like, wow, I've come so far in the single. I was still like pretty fired up by that. I think I was also just grateful to be back in the system after the whole like reflection and rebound period post Rio. Definitely more grateful for the process, I think, than I was leading up to 2016. So even though I got second and was disappointed, I was like, wow, I've come so far, and now I get a chance to be in the quad. Like pretty much it's not guaranteed, but like pretty sure spot in the quad to race that year. So that's where I ended up and raced there in the quad in 2017. And then I like knew I wanted to give the single one more chance, and I did. And then it ended up working out. Now I've been the single for however many years.
And that's awesome. And I think so I got two more questions for you. I'll ask two more questions and I'll let you go. But I'm curious, just one more thing on the training front. So as someone who's been in the sport for this long, and just again, like, highs, lows all throughout and in good way, obviously some amazing success. I guess what would you have to say is like for you personally is your, I guess, performance. I like to kind of bring it back to like performance and, just athletics in general, but like your performance and, correct me or not correct me, but this is an interesting way to describe it, but like your superpower, right? Meaning like you are someone who is very conscious of, I'm always curious to hear from people like yourself. This is something that I am very, deliberate with, non-negotiable. It could be my sleep. It could be my routines. It could be, and obviously we know that, the aerobic base, the fitness, was something that came pretty quickly to you or you've always had. But even beyond that, where it's like, I am so diligent about making sure I do my, pre-race routine or my mobility, routine in the evening or getting to bed by this time or my nutrition, or there are countless examples. But if you had to kind of whittle it down to one thing that really led to your personal success, what would that be?
It's funny. I wouldn't say I'm always the most diligent person. Sometimes I struggle to show up to practice on time, or I'll skip my mobility routine, which, you know, I can get away with sometimes, but don't recommend. Uh, sometimes I start my workouts late in the day. Like, I feel like rowers are pretty diligent and like, I gotta start at 7 a.m. Sometimes if I get my first workout in before noon, I'm like, yes. My second workout at 6. Yes. So I'm like not always the most regimented person, especially when I'm left to my own devices. It's hard. So having a team environment is critical to my success to have that accountability and group to show up with. But I would say a superpower, I think whenever I do start my practices, I'm very intentional. I think I have a high degree of focus and ability to just like absorb myself in what I'm doing in that moment, which is what you need when you race. So to be fully present with what you're doing. And yeah, so I guess intention.
I mean, that's a massive one too, because I think I always tell athletes, like it's like, you know, you have to be there present. You have to be present in the moment, right? It's like,
why
you know,
am I
it's like
doing what I'm doing right now? Like, how is this gonna lead to my goal?
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge one.
I think I also am pretty good at not being super serious and being lighthearted, maybe to a fault, but yeah.
I like that. That's a good thing. That's a good one. That's a good thing to have. And my last question for you, and again, this is, I know you're in this stage of processing and in terms of like what is next for you. But you alluded to it previously, in terms of like, oh, like, do I want to, like go down the path of racing in my home state at the Olympic level? Like, if you had to kind of rate the scale, of like, oh, I thought about it a little bit, or it's like, hey, you know what, I'm ready to, or I'm going to take a year to process or 2 years to process, or hey, you know what, I'm going to pursue my next endeavors. My last question for you is, yeah, well, have you started to kind of process, what those next moves are, and what is the weight or the scale in terms of like, oh, maybe, I'm like 15% like thinking like, oh, maybe I do go down that path of LA 2028. Where's your mindset there 3 weeks after the Olympics?
First things first, I do have the Gold Cup, so I do have to still train a little bit. I like to do well there. So that's in the end of October, Philadelphia. Anyone who wants to come out and watch, the best single sculars in the world.
You're gonna be racing. You're gonna be racing this fall. You're gonna be getting right back in there. That's great.
Yeah. So gotta win some cash money,
Yeah, I will. I'll be there. I'm about 10 minutes from. Is it at the Cooper, or is it?
Yeah, it's at the Cooper. So that's in tandem with the Allotment Challenge, so the U.S. version. So yeah, I got that on my plate.
Financial incentive. That's a good thing. Financial incentive. Go out there and
community, hang out with my international competitors, and get involved with the Philadelphia rowing community and the young athletes that they work with there. So that's always fun to do. So yeah, I look forward to doing that. And but beyond that, yes, I really want to focus on getting a job outside of rowing and having something to fall back on, or to have confidence in myself as a person outside of being an elite athlete. So, there are a lot of resources the USOPC has, so I'm trying to tap into those now and see what's available and how I can, develop myself outside of training every day. See what's interesting to me. So yeah, I definitely not planning to row my world championships the next year, likely 2 years. So, I'm 33 now, so I'm one of the veterans. I started out as the noob on the team, but now I'm in a place in my life where I'm, definitely thinking about life beyond rowing and retirement. So LA will always have been like annoyed when athletes are like, I'm retiring after this time, and they come back multiple times. So I've never said that, but I feel like I can confidently say that LA will be my last Olympics if I come back. But yeah, the lure is very strong to just be able to drive down I-5 and go to the Olympics and have my family. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. I think like either way, like you're as you consider moving into the quote unquote professional world, your resilience and the path of these last 10 years, I'm sure, is gonna serve you very well when you're, investigating, what else is out there. So that's
Yeah, I hope so. I just
exciting.
have to, I feel like, remind myself, I was a novice once and I had a lot of skills in a different arena that transferred well. So how can I do that, moving into the business world or whatever it is that I do? Um, be brave enough to suck at something new.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is you've earned a good with being at the you've earned a little bit of time to just kind of chill out and reflect for a little bit. I'm actually
Sure,
shocked that
sure,
you're
sure, but I'm going
I'm
crazy.
yeah, I know, I'm sure I'm actually shocked that you're
Shocked.
jumping into a boat and going to and jumping in a boat and traveling to Philly for which one is it, the Lotman Challenge or the Gold Cup? I forget which.
Uh, well, I'll do both. I was invited to the
Okay.
Gold Cup, the international one, and then I'll
Yeah.
probably also do the Lotman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty isolated out here at my parents. So, yeah, Moose and I have gone out a couple times, so it's nice to just connect with other, my friends, teammates who are going through the same thing.
No. Well, that's exciting, and I will make an effort to get over there and see it in action. So,
Yeah.
but no, Kara, this was awesome. I think there's so many good takeaways in there for athletes. I love diving into the initial phase of the first phase of your run career, because I think that's something that to me I resonate with, not to the same level of success, but it is fascinating talking to people who picked up the sport and just ran with it with this level of excitement, as a college athlete. So I think there's a lot of really valuable things in here for young athletes. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah,
I will
sorry it took
certainly
so
be.
long.
No, I knew that you would be one of the first people I'm coming to post Olympics. Because
Yeah,
we had to do it right. So
yeah, you get more depth now. You get to see what it's like on the other side of the games.
that
The
isn't yeah
quiet phase when people, forget
yeah.
about the Olympics. Yeah, but we got the Paralympics, so.
Yeah, still going. Yeah. So no, I think no, it was exciting to chat with you. Anything else from you, or any last pieces that you have? Any way we can help you before we close things out and you get on with the rest of your recovery. But any post Olympics recovery. But any other things that we can do to help you, or any last piece of advice that you have?
No, thanks for having me. And, if any of your athletes ever have just any questions that come to mind, message me and I'll try and get back to you. So, want to help give athletes confidence in their path and any guidance that they're interested in. So, you're doing good work doing that. So, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Kara, I really appreciate it. You're a rock star. Your story's awesome, and I'm the sustained success. Well, I can't talk. The sustained success is
There it is.
yeah, there we go. Is incredibly impressive. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Maybe we can do it again at another time down the line. And other than that, thank you for coming on. And yeah,
Thanks for having me.
We'll be checking you out at the in Philly in a couple weeks, in a couple months. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me.